Hello, welcome to the Wildline Podcast. I'm your host, Dan. This is a podcast about movies and how much money they make at the box office. Today we'll be doing a weekend review for August 3rd through the 5th, which is today. I'll walk through the top 10 at the box office, do a deeper dive on some of the new wide releases like Christopher Robin, The Spy Who Dumped Me, maybe Darkest Minds, and I'll briefly mention Death of a Nation, even though I don't want to talk about that movie. And once we talk about the top 10, I'll talk a little bit about the limited releases, and then we will walk through what's going to happen over the next few weeks at the box office. But let's dive right into the top 10. Number one at the box office this weekend was Mission Impossible Fallout, and its second weekend, it did $35 million total, a fantastic 43% drop. It's still in about 4,400 theaters, so basically the widest release possible you can do for a movie. Per theater average this weekend was about $8,000 per theater. Total gross so far for Mission Impossible Fallout is $124, almost $125 million domestically. So really great performance for Mission Impossible on its second weekend. That drop is really the sort of outstanding stat that we can focus on. A 43% drop for a huge release like this that was pushed out super wide means that the movie's connecting well with people. A lot of the people who wanted to see this movie didn't go out in the first weekend. They waited till the second weekend. So this is going to have a nice gradual decline in its later weeks here. It'll probably leave theaters in, 2 months? And a lot of what this movie is going to make was going to happen on the back end of that, it seems like. If you compare it to the other Mission Impossible movies in terms of where those movies are at, this is the 10th day of release. So I looked at all those numbers. It's doing quite well. The only other movie that it is behind in the series is Mission Impossible 2. Of course, inflation gets involved in this too. But right now it's performing second overall in this series. So a really good performance from Mission Impossible. The sort of story on this in terms of its overall performance is going to have to be with international numbers involved. Right now, foreign, it's made $205 million. Worldwide take so far for Mission Impossible Fallout is $329. Now, what does that mean in terms of profitability? Like, it's one thing to talk about the box office and sort of talk about it like a horse race between different movies, which is fine. But I like to think about it in terms of these are products. Are they profitable or not? Right? And it's hard to do with the box office just because movie theaters are not very transparent at all about how much a property or a movie makes across all different revenue streams. So it's very hard to find data for this. The best source is always Deadline.com. They have insider sources. Now, sometimes I think studios leak numbers to them that are favorable and maybe keep numbers from them that are not so favorable. So you have to take it with a grain of salt. But the story on Mission Impossible Fallout is that the break-even point is probably $550 million worldwide to $650 worldwide. I would pin it at, based on the data that Deadline has released over the last 3 or 4 years, I would pin the break-even at around $600 million, 600 to 620-ish. And that would be across all platforms, all forms of release, digital VOD, TV, every single region of the world. So I don't know. So on the one hand, it seems like the movie's doing well, right? The opening was pretty decent comparatively to the other movies in the series. The drop in the second weekend is great, but the closer I look at those numbers and that really high production budget of $178, basically $180 million production budget, I don't know, because when you think about $180 million and you compare it to like an MCU or any other big sort of comic book movie, it seems like the performance isn't really up to par with those. And so I do wonder if the profitability of this film is not going to be as high as I think the buzz around its performance is. That's the feeling that I'm getting right now. I don't know where it's going to end up at all. I have no idea what's left on its international sort of release. The foreign takes looks pretty low right now. It has not been released in China yet, so that's going to be a huge market for them. Has it been released in the UK? It has been released in the UK. The best performing foreign markets right now, overall, just aggregate, would be South Korea. It's at $25 million take so far. United Kingdom is about $10 million. What else is doing well? India, it's done about $9 million. It has been released in Hong Kong. I didn't know Hong Kong was considered a separate market, but it's done 2.8 million just in Hong Kong alone. So I don't know. Maybe it has a lot more to do in terms of foreign markets that I'm not seeing here. But I don't. Is this thing going to hit the profitability mark? There's a decent chance that it does, but the bar's pretty high based on what I've heard. Rival studios from Paramount are saying 650 worldwide to become really to become profitable. That seems like a really high number for this to hit. Now, of course, that's rival studios trying to bullshit Paramount and basically say, hey, this great movie, this whole series is not profitable. It's not like our it's not like our MCU or DCEU movies or something like that. So I think the story here is, this overall story is that Mission Impossible is doing well. It's doing right in line with, I think, the expectations of it. But there may have been some back-end issues where the production just got too high, and it may not be the $200 million profit for Paramount like they wanted. But we'll see. I'm going to keep an eye on it because I want to get more data on it. I don't want to make a judgment call that it's like underperforming or not going to make a profit yet, but I'm kind of getting that feeling just based on the rumors that I'm hearing. But which it tells a completely different story than what you're hearing in the write-ups on Variety and like New York Times when they do the box office. Oh, it's performing so well, everything's great. I don't know if that's true because I'm getting sort of mixed messages on it. But anyway, it did have a great second weekend, so I don't want to take away from that. A 43% drop is phenomenal. It means it's going to have great legs. It's looking like at least 2.5x legs or multiplier is in the bag right now. I think it's going to hit 3x multiplier overall. Let's see if it can go over 3. I think that would be a really good performance for this film right now, in context, of course. Okay, so that was number 1 this weekend. Mission Impossible followed at $35 million. Number 2 is Disney's Christopher Robin at $25 million. Opened in about 3,600 theaters. Per theater average was about $6,940. This one underperformed. Right, the expectation for this film, Disney was saying basically, oh, it's going to be in the 20s, and they're, studios are always conservative when they talk about a box office before it opens, and they almost never state it officially. It's always through rumors that you hear in Deadline and Variety. They'll never come out and say, we expect Christopher Robin to do $30 million this weekend, because they don't want to end up with egg on their face on Monday morning. So they were expecting 20s. That's what they told the press. Tracking was saying low to mid 30s. That's where I thought the basement for this film was. I really thought it was going to break out and do high 30s, low 40s. That didn't happen at all. And the question is why. So this is underperforming. I don't care any way you look at it. It's not performing well. This is a Disney movie about a major character in their universe, and it's been a major character in the Disney world for 60, 70 years. So something didn't go right here. Something didn't connect. If we take a look at just some of the baseline numbers in terms of who went to go see this movie, 55 ComScore and Screen Engine Post-Track does a breakdown of general audience versus children versus parents. So they did that for this movie. They don't usually release that data through Deadline, but they did this time. I think it's because it's just it's a children's movie, and I think it's a fascinating movie, just because the marketing suggested that it was almost like an adult film. It seemed a little dark for children. It was all about nostalgia and growing old and going back and sort of reliving your childhood. So it had a little bit of a darker, almost autumn fall to it. Which is, I don't know why they released this in August. It just seems like a very strange movie to release in the first weekend of August. So in terms of that audience breakdown, general, kids, parents, the general audience here, neither kid nor parent, was 55%. Kids was 30%, and parents were 15%. So right there, you're seeing that it didn't really play as strong as a children's film with the actual audience who showed up. I think a lot of it has to do with the marketing and the tone of the film. I always like to do a little bit of a breakdown in terms of when a film underperforms or overperforms. I like to sort of bracket it out in a few different. It's almost like a postmortem. Like, why did this happen? And the way that I do it is product and marketing are two sort of verticals in that. Under product, we have product quality and product conception, the overall conception of the product, and the actual quality of that said product. And this is getting really wonky and really nerdy, but this is why I do this podcast. So hopefully enjoy this. On the other vertical is marketing, and that is marketing quality and marketing quantity. Under quantity, how much do they market? Who do they target? The quality would be just the tone, style of the marketing itself. What do the trailers look like? Were they good? Were they bad? And when I think about Christopher Robin, the issues that are popping up to me right away, product conception. What is this film? Is this a film for adults who like Winnie the Pooh? And if it is, how big of an audience is that? Like, I certainly grew up with Winnie the Pooh. I don't remember it hardly at all. It just didn't. The conception seems way off base here. It doesn't really make any sense to the core audiences for this film. And then you can relate that to the marketing quality. The trailers made it look like, and it was an adult film. Is it an adult film? I don't know. And then you look at something like product quality, and the best way to judge that, I think, is like a Rotten Tomatoes score, a Metacritic score, and then maybe what the audience thought about it. The Rotten Tomatoes score is 68% for Christopher Robin, a 6.2 rating out of 10 from critics. That's not very good. Especially, it's one thing if this is like a smaller film and whatever. This is Disney we're talking about. Anything under an 80% for Disney is a failure. I mean, they're a multi-billion, probably like Apple, $1 trillion company at this point. They should not be releasing products that are sub 80% around Tomatoes. That's just should be a hard line in the sand for them. I don't need a hard line in the sand. What the hell does that mean? I don't know. I'm just making stuff up at this point. Audience score is 92% Rotten Tomatoes, but I can't trust that or believe in that because Rotten Tomatoes is so easily hacked. What is not as easily hacked is Cinema Score with a score of A. So what I'm hearing in terms of product quality for Christopher Robin is critics didn't like it that much. It's not up to par with the Disney release. That's what I'm hearing from critics. From the audiences, I'm hearing from the people that did go to see it, hey, it's pretty good. I enjoyed it. I liked it. An A Cinema Score you can't really fake. So the people that were surveyed by Cinema Score really did like this movie. So there's definitely a little bit of disconnect here between critics and audiences. And what that suggests to me is, okay, then maybe there wasn't even a product quality issue here. Maybe the conception was kind of weird. Didn't really make a lot of sense why you're making this movie. But what the end result was is it's not too bad. Critics didn't like it, but audiences like it. And that's what kind of matters a little bit more in terms of who buys tickets, right? I think if they, in terms of the quality, marketing quantity was too low. I didn't see enough of these ads. They weren't out all that much. I wonder what the ad spend was. Why are you dumping it in early August? There's a lot of red flags that go up to me because this seems like a movie you would pump out in November or December. It's a perfect fall film or even holiday film. Why is it going on in August? It makes me think that Disney didn't believe in this film as much as they maybe should have because people liked it, right? And so there's a lot of different issues going on here. The quality sold me a film. The marketing quality sold me a film that didn't make any sense to me whatsoever. It didn't really align with any audience targeting that I can think of. Me and my friends joked, we're all in our mid-30s or 30-somethings. We joked, hey, if I want to go cry for 2 hours, I'll go see Christopher Robin. And that's how we see it. I think that's a lot of how people over 25 see this movie. It's like a cry fest. And that's fine and cool, but it is what it is. That doesn't seem like a good children's film, does it? I don't know. It's like taking your kid to see Bridge of Terabithia. You know how it ends. Come on. So I don't. It's one of the stranger releases this year. It just doesn't make a lot of sense to me why this film was made. Its performance kind of matches that awkwardness of the conception and the marketing, and I think it's unfortunate because the people who did see it liked it. I think there was an interesting story here that you could have told, at least to the marketing. I don't know, something about everything in the marketing just looks so muted to me. It was so muted and so kind of, I wouldn't say cold, it was just sort of morose. And it's just, you gotta wonder if they had approached this project in a different way, maybe even before they got, to the marketing phase of it and said, can we liven this thing up a bit? Can we make this fun and a little more interesting, a little more vibrant? That's what's going to play well in the cinemas these days. People do not want to go and see a movie that makes them super sad. Like, I can turn on the news and get super sad in 5 minutes. I don't need to go to the multiplex to do that. So, okay, that's my little mini rant on Christopher Robin. I never understood why the film was coming out in August. It looks like a fall film to me. It seems like an October, November December release. I thought it was quite strange that they pushed it out in August. It's just the weirdest time to put this movie out. And what that says to me is that Disney did not believe in this film. They knew something didn't sit right with them, and so that's why they pushed it out in early August, because it was pretty quiet. Like, there's not a ton of stuff coming out right now. We're in the dog days of summer, as the people in the studio say. Like, it is quiet, and it's going to be quiet until we get to The Nun in September. And it was quiet last year for all of August until we got to It, which was a huge, massive hit. Over $120 million opening, the biggest horror opening of all time. Studios are waiting to get bailed out by that next big September hit. August is just super slow. Everybody's on vacation. Half of Europe leaves for the entire month of August. Here in the States, it's not as extreme as that, but a lot of people take a week, 2-week vacation now. So it is going to be super slow. So I think the strategy there was from Disney, hey, we have this kind of weird movie that we made. We think it could do okay. We just can't trust to open it in the really busy season of October, November, and December. So let's pump it out in August and see if we can't make some cash with it when it's quiet. And that strategy did not work out all that well. Now, where's this thing going to go? Okay, so it's opened pretty depressed, I would say, for a Disney film overall. $25 million is not a great opening for this. The thing they have going for it is this. A cinema score means the people that saw it liked it. So the word of mouth here is going to be pretty good. People aren't going to listen to the critics on this movie, I don't think. So what's going to happen here is the multipliers, and it is a children's film technically, even though it doesn't look like one. So the multiplier here is going to be pretty darn good. I think you're looking at a multiplier of Deadline compares this movie a lot to Pete's Dragon, which had an A cinema score just like Christopher Robin, opened in the low 20s. That had a 3.5x multiplier. I think that might be doable for this just because of that A cinema score. So 3.5, I'm doing math on the show. It's so unprofessional. You're looking at $87 million total take for this domestically. Internationally, it was banned in China because the Winnie the Pooh is used as like sort of like propaganda meme against the leader in China. So they've banned Winnie the Pooh, which is just the most weird, absurd thing I've ever heard in my life. It has not opened on hardly any foreign markets whatsoever. And in fact, I don't think it's any. So we'll see how it does internationally. I just bashed the movie for like 30 minutes. I don't know what the production budget is on this. I don't see it listed anywhere. It's Disney, so they spent a lot on this. And I'm sure the marketing, even though I didn't see a ton of it, they probably just like plastered like children's TV and YouTube and stuff like that with ads for this movie. So I think the costs are going to be pretty high. Overall, what's my take on this in the first weekend? It's underperforming, and it's not going to do all that well. And you could probably tell that was going to happen a few weeks ago. I sort of believed in the hype of Disney and that Disney would find a way to make this work. But now looking back on it, I was like, yeah, the conception was just so weird. Just an odd film to even make and an odd film to put out in the first week of August. Okay, enough about Christopher Robin. Let's get this show on the road, folks. So number 3 was The Spy Who Dumped Me. Christopher Robin was at 25. The Spy Who Dumped Me was at 12.3 million for the weekend. Opened in about 3,100 theaters, so a little bit of a muted wide release for this Lionsgate film. Per theater average was $3,900, basically $4,000 per theater. Total gross, obviously, $12.35 million. Budget on this was $40 million. So what's the story on this movie? It's hard to even wrap my head around this one. I didn't really know what it was until like a month ago. I saw it on the schedule, and I kept saying the name, The Spy Who Dumped Me. I was like, what is this? Why have I not heard anything about this? So then finally I caught the trailer, popped up on an ad somewhere, and I was like, okay, I get this. It's like a spy comedy, buddy movie, with Mila Kunis and Kate McKinnon. So two really, like, I would say very it stars right now, especially Kate McKinnon. Like, she's so hot right now. She is. I mean, she's one of the best performers in SNL history, I think, at this point, and she's so young. And she's just everywhere. And she's just, everybody loves her, I think. She's one of those people who really crosses all the divides in terms of demographics and stuff. So she's a super comedic star right now. Mila Kunis is what she is. She's just kind of, a good leading lady. She has been for the last decade. So you had the talent here. Let's go back to the postmortem that I did for Christopher Robin. Like, what happens here? 12.3 is not good. It's not a good opening. It's an underperformance. The budget here was so low, only $40 million for a wide release like this. It might end up, breaking even somewhere along the line. In terms of the product quality here, as we check off the boxes of what happened, really, really bad. 37% in Rotten Tomatoes, which is awful for a movie like this. More, I think, alarming is the actual ratings from critics was 4.9 out of 10. That's horrifically bad. Like, critics hated this movie. Audience score was a 78 Rotten Tomatoes. Again, I throw that out there with a grain of salt, which is not very good. Cinema score was a B, which is bad for a movie like this. Anything below like an A minus B plus is just not good, and a B for a kind of low rent comedy like this it's not great. And so the product quality is very suspect. The product conception, the whole concept of the film, why they did it, and what the goal was of making it, I thought it was pretty good. Right? Spy, the only thing is, like, spy movies are sort of like, The Spy came out, what was that, 3 years ago? That didn't perform very well, had a great multiplier, but didn't open very high. I don't know if spy movies are that big anymore. I know Mission Impossible, obviously they're spies, so that's, it's always like one of those genres of film that, was really big for a long time, especially because of the James Bond stuff. But you think just like spy films in general now, there's so many of them, and, this is sort of like a parody of those films. I don't know. People weren't that interested in The Spy, so why would they be interested in The Spy Who Dumped Me? It seemed very light in tone. The action seemed comedic on some level. There's nothing serious about this movie, I guess is the point I'm trying to make. So I think the product conception was okay. It just seemed kind of like, why are we doing this? Was a big question that kept on popping up in my head when I saw this movie on the radar. Why is this happening? Why are we making this? What's the end point of this? Who's the target demographic? All that sort of stuff. And so when you match that kind of weird, it's almost like where Christopher Robin just didn't make any sense from a product conception, because it was like, who are you making this movie for? This one kind of makes sense in terms of that, like, oh, it's, it's a buddy flick for women, and women are going to show up, hopefully. It's kind of like an Ocean's 8 play on some level. And so they'll show up. But I think when you look outside just that demographic play, or targeting, I should say, like, what are you trying to accomplish with this movie? Is it like a parody of spy movies like The Spy was? And I'll tell you this, The Spy is a really good movie. It's a great parody of that genre. This doesn't look like a satirical parody per se. It just kind of looks like a loosey-goosey sort of let's have fun and travel film. Kind of like the Ocean's 8 stuff a little bit, but like, it just didn't seem like there was a deeper purpose behind this. And it felt very sort of fly-by-night in terms of how it was produced and stuff. When you look at like the trailer, it looks like they sort of threw this together, didn't they? And I'm not sort of disparage the studio, the people that made the film. It didn't come across as a very focused or sort of, I don't want to say serious, but like important work to go see. Right. And to get someone to go to the theater, it has to be that these days. There are so many different options to entertain yourself, especially at home, which is easier and cheaper. You got to do something special to get people out there. And there was nothing special about this movie that came across in its marketing. The cinema score of B and the product quality, obviously, I talked about, is not very good. In terms of that audience targeting, let's see how well they did. So who showed up for The Spy Who Dumped Me? 61% was female, which is great. That really and usually movies are split in terms of tickets sold on average 50-50, right down the middle. If you take a look at the MPAA's 2017 report on tickets sold, 49% female overall, 51% male. So this definitely over-indexed with the females. 78% was over 25. Usually that breakdown on all tickets sold is 33% under 25, 67% over 25. So it over-indexed as well with the over 25 crowd. So it was definitely skewed towards females over 25. 43% of females were over 25. That's the biggest demo. Hey, I just sort of figured that out as I was doing the data. And I was right. Followed by the second biggest demo was guys over 25 with 28% of the total audience. What does that mean? So I think I think they targeted it appropriately. The people that they were going after showed up, just not enough of them. And there was no hype, no buzz, no spark to this film whatsoever. And this is what happens. It opens at 12. I don't think the multiplier is going to be all that great. It's such a depressed opening. You would hope for at least a 3x multiplier. So it hits 36. I think it's going to hit like 34, 35. And I don't think it's going to do all that well in VOD. So I think this is not a good performance at all. And the only thing that Lionsgate has going for them is the production budget was so low. And so maybe that will bail them out. But this is definitely a swing and a miss for The Spy Who Dumped Me, opening up at number 3 at 12.3 million. Number 4 was Mamma Mia. Here we go again, $9 million. Very good drop, 39% drop. Well, basically 40% drop. Starting to lose some theaters, lost 155 theaters this weekend. Per theater average was $2,700. Total gross so far from Mamma Mia, here we go again, is 91. Overall take on this performance, it's doing pretty well, right to expectations. Single right down the middle, if we're going to use baseball metaphors for the rest of the show. So yeah, it's doing pretty well. There's not much more to say about this in terms of its overall performance. I do want to kind of look at the international, because I think it's a very big international film. 139 foreign so far, 230 worldwide. Right now the breakdown is about 40-60 domestic to foreign. So good performance. We'll keep our eye on that. If it keeps having low drops like that, it's going to have great legs. So the original had, I think, 5x legs or something like that. Crazy. So doing pretty well. Equalizer 2 came in at number 5 at 8.8 million. 37% drop. That's great. 660 theaters it lost this weekend. Per theater average is an okay $3,200 on its third weekend. Equalizer 2 now sits at $80 million. Sony's got to be happy about that. The production budget was pretty high, $62 million. But the performance here, I think that the Sony is maybe even ecstatic about, because it just didn't seem like this movie had any momentum or inertia going for it when it opened, right when it opened, but it really overperformed its opening weekend and has done pretty well in subsequent weekends. It had a tough weekend last weekend because of Mission Impossible opening up. It really cut it down a bit, but now it's recovered. Number 6 this weekend was Hotel Transylvania 3 Summer Vacation, 8.2 million, 33% drop. Still in 3,100 theaters, lost about 850 theaters this weekend, so it's on a pretty steep decline now. Per theater average was $2,600 per theater. Total take so far for Hotel Transylvania 3 Summer Vacation is $136 million. This one's performing pretty well. Not like a super big overperformance, but I think it's going to be a nice little profit for Sony on Hotel Transylvania 3. Maybe we'll see a fourth one. Number 7 was Ant-Man and the Wasp, 6.2 million, a 29% drop. What a great drop. Lost 780 theaters, so it is starting its decline here. They're preparing for landing, if you will. Per theater average was $27, almost $2,800 in its fifth weekend. That's pretty darn good for a fifth weekend. Total take so far is 195. I've talked about this movie a lot. I don't want to dive too much more into it. My take on it is this. This performance is okay. It's good. It's nowhere near the doom and gloom that people were saying when it opened on that low 70 million something number. People were like, oh, it's not going to make 180. It's not, clearly it was going to make 180, which the original did. Clearly it was going to break 200 pretty easily, and it's going to do that. So I love following the box office because it's like politics a lot. Things go up and down constantly, and the clout of a film or a movie oscillates every week, it seems like. So when Ant-Man was opening, the quick sort of summary of this is when Ant-Man was opening, the expectation for me and a lot of people was easily makes $100 million opening weekend. This is MCU now. This is the studio of Black Panther. Like, this is the studio of Infinity War. how is an MCU movie not going to open to $100 million? It just didn't make any sense to us anymore. And when it didn't open to $100 million, I thought that it was pretty muted and depressed opening. But I wasn't stupid enough to believe that the multiplier was going to be super low too. With a movie like this, it's a sequel, so usually the multiplier is a little bit lower, but it's MCU. Ant-Man is sort of playful. It's lighter. It's also not a movie people are going to rush out to see right away like Infinity War. So I knew the multiplier was going to be decent. But the initial take was like, oh, it didn't hit $100 million. That's not so great. Then there was like this opposite reaction of, oh, it didn't hit $100 million. Now its multiplier is going to be terrible. And like, that was stupid that people thought that. And now it's sort of like, okay, the multiplier looks pretty good, so everything's okay. I don't know. Like, my take on it is this is an underperformance overall for Ant-Man. And it kind of puts into question whether there should be another Ant-Man movie. And I'm not saying that because this isn't going to be profitable. It is going to be profitable. But I don't know if it's going to be profitable enough to get MCU to be super excited about doing a third Ant-Man. Get rid of Peyton Reed. I hate him as a director on a variety of levels. He shouldn't be directing these films. And I saw Ant-Man and Wasp. It's not a good movie. It's kind of a shit show. And I just watched Black Panther and Infinity War kind of back to back. I thought both those films were a lot of fun. Infinity War was so much better than I thought it was going to be. It was a really fun ride. Ant-Man just seems so like, just so boring in comparison and so lightweight in comparison. And that was one of the big criticisms of the film overall as that performance came in. It was like, God, this just does not feel an important movie. And I know that I said I wasn't going to say a lot about Ant-Man, but of course I go on a rant about Ant-Man like I do every episode. So I think financially it's a good performance. I think for the longevity of MCU, it's not a great performance. And you would have wanted to see this. I would have wanted, if I was MCU and Disney, I would have been happy with $100 million opening and $300 million take domestically, multiply that by whatever for international. That's what I think would be the baseline success here, and it's not hitting those numbers anywhere near that. So I think it's a little bit of an underperformance despite the fact it's going to make a big profit. Okay, moving on. Number 8 was The Darkest Minds from Fox, a YA movie, $34 million production. So not a big, huge movie here. I didn't know anything about it when it opened. Only did $5.8 million for the weekend. Theater count was about 3,100 theaters. Per theater average was terrible at $1,850 per theater. That's awful. I don't know what the deal on this film was. I saw it on the calendar. I talked about it coming out, and every single time I was like, Darkest Minds, what the fuck is that? I still don't know what the F it is. I have no clue what this movie's about. I'm sure it's a dystopian YA thing. Look, guys, that's been over for like 5-6 years. Let's move on. Like Hunger Games was, I think, Hunger Games was the last major super successful series of that. I guess maybe it was the only super successful one. I think like the YA thing really, I felt kicked off with Twilight, even though that's not really traditional YA, young adult novel. It felt like it kicked off with Twilight, and then Hunger Games came out. And we had that whole series of films, which felt like that went on for decades, but it wasn't really that long. And so when the Maze Runner movies started to come out and they didn't do well, then there's like Fifth Wave that didn't do well. It was like so clear that like, oh, this is over, right? Like this has been over for like 2-3 years now. So why are they pushing this movie out? It's one of those movies I think that got greenlit like maybe 5-6 years ago. I say that, and the book probably didn't come out until like 2015. And they just, momentum and inertia kept this film in production and going. And this is the end result when you do that. A terrible opening, maybe saved by the fact that the production budget's so low, but this is not a good performance. It's a pretty massive flop. The key for like, if you want to like make a measurement of like what's a flop versus not a flop, just like maybe like a general rule that you could use, I would say anything under a guaranteed flop is anything under $3,000 per theater on a release that's over 3,000 theaters. Like that would be like a hard, fast rule. If it's under $3,000 per theater, that's a pretty massive flop. Disregarding production budgets or anything like that, that's not good. And we'll actually get to that rule in a bit here when we talk about a limited release that went wide. Okay, so that's Darkest Minds at number 8. Number 9 was Incredibles 2, $5 million, 31% drop for its 8th weekend. Lost 800 theaters. This is kind of on its way out now. It's just dropping below the $3,000 per theater mark in its 8th weekend. Basically $2,800 per theater. Total take so far for Incredibles 2 is $583. That's $583 million, people. It's well over $500 million at this point. I think the best performing animation film of all time. Huge win for Disney. That's the Disney expectation, that you're going to hit grand slams most of the time. And if you whiff, you're going to hit like a double. Christopher Robin is lucky if it's a single. Okay, so Incredibles 2, we've talked about a lot. Fantastic. Number 10, Teen Titans Go to the Movies, 4.8 million. Pretty high drop for a children's film. 53% in its second weekend. Not good. Per theater average is terrible in its second weekend, and $1,500 per theater. This one is capped out at basically $21 million for Teen Titans Go to the Movies. Terrible performance. Just had a really low production budget of like $10 million. So maybe that does it some favors, but this is definitely more on the flop side than anything. Okay, so that's the top 10. The big stories are Christopher Robin flops a bit. Mission Impossible Fallout has a great second weekend, but I'm not sure if that's really going to get it over the line to big profits. Spy Who Dumped Me flopped. Terrible idea, terrible concepts. Just didn't work, essentially. Despite the fact that talented stars in it, but just didn't seem like it was a good movie even from the start. Darkest Minds flopped. And then I forgot Death of a Nation, the propaganda piece, the far right propaganda. I'm going to call it fascist propaganda, which is what it is. Opened on 1,000 theaters, did $2,300 per theater. Terrible. Obviously, the audience was mostly white, 70% Caucasian, 10% Latino, and the rest were other. 57% men saw this movie. 86% of the audience was over 25. 41% of that over 55. So whatever. It's a propaganda movie made by somebody who cobbled together some funding to make fascist propaganda. I'm not going to talk about it anymore. I don't want to talk about it. I'll never mention it again on the show. Okay. So that's the top 10. What else did I want to talk about? I wanted to talk a little bit about 8th grade. So this is a movie I've mentioned a lot in this podcast. Sundance Darling. Critics love it. It sits at 98% in Rotten Tomatoes. One of the best scores of the year, hands down. Even more impressive to me is the actual rating from critics. 8.8 out of 10, which is just, this is top tier, top shelf art is what it is. There's no way you can argue against that. This is a wonderful film. I know it's a wonderful film, and I haven't seen it yet. That's how good these ratings are. 88% Rotten audience score. I don't think there is a cinema score on this. I don't know why. Let's see. No, there's nothing coming up for 8th grade, unfortunately. It sucks. I wish they would do. I guess they don't do it unless it's a certain number of theaters. In any event, so it tried to go wide this weekend. This is from A24, one of my favorite current distributors, studios, whatever you want to call them. And like I said last week, I thought there might be a slim chance that this breaks out, but I thought in my gut that it wasn't going to, and I was right. This did not break out. It added 900 theaters. Its wide release here on over 1,000 theaters. Its per theater average was $2,600. It failed on my release. There's no other way to do it. It's made $6.5 million so far, so that's not so bad. They tried to get it across that gap, the Grand Canyon between art film, darling, high art release to wide release, mass appeal hit, and it didn't make it. It kind of fell flat in its face, right in the middle of that gap. This isn't going anywhere in terms of money, and I only say that I'm almost so harsh about it because there is this misconception, I think, among art lovers and film lovers that, you know, if you make something really, really, really good and it has a great studio behind it, like A24 is doing so well these days. And they won the Best Picture, Moonlight. Come on. And they almost won it last year, too, with Lady Bird. So they know what they're doing. They know how to make really, or produce and distribute really good films, or buy really good films, I think, in this case. So there's this misconception that if you make a great product that people will buy it. That is 100% not true. This is one of the best films released this year. I can say that confidently, and I've never seen it. I can just tell by the reactions. I can tell by the way people talk about it. This is a really special movie. That does not matter when it comes to the box office and the business of film and releasing films. You can make the best film ever, and if you don't market it appropriately and you don't release it appropriately, no one's going to see it. That's not necessarily the case with Eighth Grade. It's done so well in limited release. It really has. Had a great... I got to look up its first weekend here just to see what it did. And I talked about it a lot when it did its 4-theater release back in the middle of July 13th. It did almost $66,000 per theater. $66,000 per theater. Again, it was only 4 theaters, but that gives you a barometer of how the New York and Los Angeles audiences approached this film. They were ecstatic about it. They loved it. And as it released more wider and wider, the per theater average didn't really crash, right? At 33 theaters the next weekend, it did $25K per theater, which is still great. When it bumped up to 158 theaters last weekend, it did $8,000, which is still really strong. What happened here is they bumped it up to over 1,000 this weekend. And I knew that was the turning point, right? That was the moment where you try and jump that gap between art film and wide release hit. And they couldn't make it. And I kind of knew they weren't going to make it, because I don't want to be like negative about the general public, but there wasn't really a lot in the concept of the movie that was going to appeal to the average American. It just wasn't. It's too intellectual. It's too cerebral. It's an art film. Like, it's a film that makes you feel a lot of things that might be uncomfortable, which is what a lot of art films are all about. They're not the sappy movies that make you feel good like rom-coms. I'm not saying anything negative about those movies. I love rom-coms. The only times I've seen 27 Dresses, like 100 times. I love that movie. But it's not one of those movies. And it's sort of like the difference between, like, it's hard, like a good analogy just from marketing and business in general. Eighth Grade is a product meant for a smaller group of people. When you try and translate or release that product to a huge group in the general public, it does not translate well at all. The people in that small group that it was targeted for absolutely love this. Go and talk to somebody who saw Eighth Grade and they're going to be like, this is amazing, I loved it. The problem is that it cannot translate over to the general public, because the general public goes to movies to escape. They go to movies to be entertained, to feel warm and happy and good feelings. Eighth Grade is about awkwardness. It's about feeling uncomfortable, and that's why the art film people love it, because it has a lot of substance and interesting takes on human emotion and what it's like to be an awkward kid in eighth grade. But that's not an experience a lot of people want to replicate, which is why this is never going to do all that well on the wide release side. So I hate being right about this one. I hate it because it looks like an awesome movie. I'm going to see it as soon as I can. But I don't think it ever really had a chance to play well with wide audiences, unfortunately. Okay. That was my little deep dive in eighth grade. Any other limited releases to talk about? Three Identical Strangers is doing okay. $8.5 million so far. Really, really low drops. 12% drop this weekend. It's only on 400 theaters. I kind of wish eighth grade had done that sort of release. And it's funny too, because like all of these movies, and sorry to bother you, I also want to talk about briefly, A24, Neon, Annapurna. Remember those three names. Those are the three sort of indie darling limited release kings right now. And they're in like a fight and competition here about who can put out the best films and have them make the most money. And it's kind of funny. It's fun to watch because the type of movies that they're putting out they're amazing films. These are the best films being released in the cinemas. If you see an amazing movie, I guarantee it's from A24, Neon, or Annapurna. Like, sorry to bother you, amazing. Eighth grade, obviously, reaction, amazing. Think about all like the best movies to start with. The A24 has probably released them. So it's cool to see them sort of duke it out and see their different release strategies and how to get the general public to try and see these amazing movies. Three Identical Strangers is a documentary. It's about $8.5 million. It's done a very interesting, slow burn release. And I wish A24 did this with 8th Grade. I would have loved to see 8th Grade in theaters for 4 or 5 months. Just keep it out there, do a roadshow thing on it if you want, and then push it out to VOD and later in this year in November or December, and that's perfect for award season. But they tried to go too big too quickly, which is what is the fatal flaw of releasing a limited film. Too big too quick. Same thing with happened Sorry to Bother You, which did 800K this weekend. Total takes for Sorry to Bother You is 15 million. This is Annapurna, I think, kind of screwed up on this one too. It did really well in limited release. I kind of want to take a look and see what it did on its opening weekend. Did 16 theaters, 45K per theater on 16 theaters is insane. That's so good. But the moment they tried to go wide the next weekend, they tried to go wide the second weekend of release, and then went over 1,000 theaters in its third weekend release. That doesn't make any sense. It makes zero sense to that. This is a high art film. Like, if you want someone in Omaha to see this movie, they need to have 3 or 4 people tell them to go see it. That's the only way they're going to show up. So when you out of the blue put this movie in theaters, they don't know anything about it, they're not going to show up. That's just not how it works. So, it's I think it's so fascinating, the limited. I could go on and on about it. I don't want to go on any more about it, but that's why I dive into this limited release stuff, because it's almost like a whole different world within the box office and film releasing. There's a whole different art form to it. And sometimes it's a win, like a Big Sick by Amazon Studios was a big win for a limited sort of art film release. Ladybird was a big win for A24. But a lot of the times you have these wonderful films like 8th Grade, 3 Identical Strangers, and Sorry to Bother You. They just don't connect, and it's so bad, because I can guarantee you these are 3 of the best films that you can see in the movies right now, and 3 of the best films that you're going to get the most out of if you go see. Even if you don't know anything about them. So, I don't know, I just want to talk about a little bit about limited releases there, and unfortunately I don't think 8th Grade is going to go anywhere now. And that also, another problem too is it hurts the awards contention. Because if it doesn't do well at the box office, that does hurt it with the Academy voters. They kind of see it as a little bit of a failure. So, it is what it is. Okay, anything else limited? Probably not. Miseducation of Cameron Post did open 2 theaters, 26K per theater, going nowhere. Sorry. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about, before I close out the show here, about what's coming up over the next few weeks. And in order to sort of give me an idea of how these movies are going to do, I'm going to go to Hollywood Stock Exchange to just sort of take a look and see what the general consensus among the nerds are in terms of how these movies are going to do. Dog Days comes out on this Wednesday. I don't know anything about this movie. LD Entertainment. Does anybody know what's going on with this? I don't. I've got no clue. Hollywood Stock Exchange has it listed at an $18 million share price, which means low single digit or opening. I don't know anything about it. I don't know what's going on with it. Are there any stars in this movie? I feel like there's weird production companies popping up every so often. Rob Corddry, Vanessa Hudgens. I don't know. Okay, I'm done with this, so I'm not going to talk about it anymore. It's not going to do any money, so whatever. Moving on. So this weekend, real weekend, not the Wednesday opening, on the 10th, you have Black Klansman from Spike Jonze coming out. I believe Jordan Peele was supposed to do this movie, but he just didn't have time to do it. So he's like, hey, Spike Lee, you want to do this? And he said yes. The consensus right now is low opening. It's sitting at a $26 million share price, which basically translates over to about a $10 million opening. I don't know. I feel like it might outperform that expectation a bit. From Focus Features, 1,500 theaters for the release. That's a low number for a release, for a wide release. So I don't know how much Focus Features believes in this movie doing well. And I don't know, do we have any reviews up for it? 96% Rotten Tomatoes. How many reviews, though? 50 reviews. Okay, so the quality looks like it's there. It's about, I believe, a black police officer who goes undercover with the KKK. Really interesting. I think it's going to be a very fascinating film to see. I don't know if that's going to translate over to big business, though. So they're expecting like a $10 million opening so far as the consensus. The Meg opens up, the last real big blockbuster, if you can call it that, is coming up on the 10th as well. wide release, probably 4,000 theaters. It looks like. What's that one going to do? It's sitting at a 58 share price on Hollywood Stock Exchange, so that translates to about a $21 million opening. I again, like I've said this a few times on the show, I just have no clue what the Meg's going to do. It looks terrible, and I love sharks. Like Jaws is probably my top 5 movies all time, so I love anything sharks. I watch Shark Week every year. If I'm not into it, how is that going to play with like people who aren't that into sharks, which I don't know. I think a lot of people are into sharks. I don't know. I feel like right now I'm seeing it open below 20. I'm seeing like an $18-19 million opening. I think it's going to flop. But I could be wrong about that. I don't know. So we'll see how the reviews are for that. Are there anything up? I don't think there's anything up now for Meg. No score yet. Basically, it's a terrible movie. I can almost guarantee that they're going to embargo the reviews until the last possible second because I know they're going to be terrible. Slender Man's coming out. That's probably not going to do too well either. Maybe $8-9 million opening overall. The big movie that I think is coming out is Crazy Rich Asians. There's a lot of buzz with this. It's on magazine covers. It's on the cover Hollywood Reporter. There's something about this film about coming along in like the doldrums of August. It just really sticks out as an interesting movie. And I think, obviously Asian Americans are going to show up and Asian Canadians are going to show up and see this, I think in droves. So that's on a huge proportion of our population, but that could give it a nice little bump. And if it's really good, then a lot of people are just going to show up. So it's sitting, they're basically expecting, what is it looking at? $54 share on Hollywood Stock Exchange. So that basically translates to like a $20 million opening, kind of similar to Meg. It's opening on a Wednesday, it looks like. I have no idea how to read that. I'm going to go ahead and say it's going to overperform. Opens up at 25 to 30. That's what I'm saying right now. I'm sticking to it. Mile 22 is also coming out there on the 17th, along with Alpha. Alpha is going to bomb huge. This should have been released 2 or 3 years ago. I don't know what happened. I think it got shelved. Mile 22, Lauren from Walking Dead. What's her actual name? That's sexist of me for not knowing that. She's not even listening to Hollywood Stock Exchange. Come on. From SDX, Peter Berg, Mark Wahlberg movie. No, can nobody go see this, please? Like they just make the biggest schlock sometimes. It's not interesting and it's not good. They did Darkwater Horizon and Patriots Day like back to back. Look, I saw both those movies in the theater. I don't know why. Don't ask me why. Well, I went to go see them. There's nothing interesting about those movies. Either of them. They're not good films. They're like made for TV movies that Peter Berg, because he's so well connected or whatever, gets made. And it's like, man, like I wish this industry would be a little bit more open to younger talent and newer talent and give them $40 million to make a movie instead of giving Peter Berg to make this crap. I can already tell you it's a terrible movie. In any event, sorry, I got really curmudgeonly there. I just don't like Peter Berg for some reason. $38 million is the price right now. So that basically translates over to about a $14 million opening. So that's the expectation there from the nerds, as I'll call them. Wow, it is August, isn't it? There's really Happy Time Murders comes out. Axel's not going to do anything. Searching. So the movies that I think are going to break out that I'm seeing from the August list right now. I think Meg's going to flop. I think Black Klansman has a chance to really break out. But my biggest bet on a breakout is Crazy Rich Asians. And I think Searching, which comes out on August 24th, which is like the worst weekend of the year. It's because everybody's going back to school and college. But there's something about that trailer. I just think it looks really good. The only problem there is it looks a little bit too much like the Unfriended movies or whatever. So that might hurt it. John Cho is in it. He's amazing. And so I think that has a chance to break out. But those are my sort of my takeaways for August would be Klansman, Crazy Rich Asians, and Searching to break out. Okay. That is all I have for today, folks. A little bit longer of a show. I apologize for that. I kind of want to keep it below like the the hour mark, and I made that happen. So thanks for listening. Thanks for sticking with me here. I will be back. I might do a little bit special show on MoviePass. Someone asked on YouTube about that. I've been very fascinated about MoviePass since it started. I was one of the first people to sign up for it. I think it has been a wild ride with that company. So I might do like a quick 20-minute show on MoviePass and what's going on with them. But thanks for listening, guys. This is the Wildline Podcast. I will be back next weekend. Thanks.